This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Mayor A.C. Wharton talks about taxes, the state of the city's finances, and more tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. We are joined tonight by City Mayor A.C. Wharton, City of Memphis.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. Mayor Wharton, we just finished a very contentious budget season. You were on the show with some finance people from your office just a couple weeks ago. We've had city council members on the show talking about a number of key things that have gone on in the budget against the backdrop of a reappraisal year with property values being down, in some cases dramatically. The state comptroller coming in and raising real concerns about the debt structure for the city and long-term pensions and benefits and so on. And then to get the budget done, the council and your office did a tax increase going from 311 to 340, a pretty big number. Is this a good budget? Is it a sustainable budget?
Well, it begins us on the road toward coming up with sustainable budgets. You can't get it all done in 1 year. You can't undo what has accumulated over many, many years, decades, in a sense. But it does begin us on a path toward coming up with sustainable budgets in the sense that we deliberately, along with the council, came up with a budget that did not look merely at 2014, but it said, what about the debt in 2015? What about the debt in 2014? And that's why we were pushing for the higher rate, because the comptroller had said, no more of this, just let's get by 12 months and then figure out what we'll do once that ends. If you look at this budget at the 340 rate, it adds to the reserves in 2014. It adds to the reserves also, if necessary, in 2015 and out. But the key thing that caught the comptroller's attention was, now what are you doing about the debt that's looming out there? Well, if you look at that budget, the increases in the debt service, not merely for 2014, it's covered in 2014, clearly it's covered, but also we covered it in 2015 and we made an approach toward dealing with it in 2016. The vice that the comptroller spotted was not that we had this debt out there. A debt, unfortunately, is just a fact of life when it comes to municipal governments. But we did not have a discernible plan as to how we were going to deal with it. So to answer your question, this is the beginning of the completion of a plan that dictates how we will deal with the reserves and the debt. And that's what the comptroller wanted.
Critics of city government, critics of your office and of this budget, and on the city council, we've had a number of folks on there who want to cut a lot more. Yeah. And when you talk about cutting, what you're really talking about, and I think everyone agrees, you're talking about cutting people. I mean, that's the biggest expense within the city government. Why didn't this budget cut more people? Why raise taxes to get it done?
Well, let me say this. That is perhaps one of the most this idea of city government hasn't cut is probably one of the most shallow thought in terms of thought and just really looking at the facts. Fact of the matter is, if you exclude the police department, the number of employees in city government on the general fund is down by about 13.5% in 3 years. Even including the police department, it's down by 3.7%. So by George, we have cut. And the very folks who say cut, cut, cut will be the very ones that you'll see coming up in the days ahead who will be blasting me for the attrition plan in the fire department. So I want to see those folks who talk about cutting. I'm going to muscle up here, man up, and go over there and go to the police department and you start pulling the men and women out of the police department and the fire department. Why there? Because that's where over 70% of the personnel expenditures are. The bottom line is that we have cut. And it's so asinine for folks to continue saying, well, all they do is raise taxes. The fact of the matter is, the city council and the administration have cut taxes. Yeah, 3 years in a row.
Right.
And I want somebody to come in and show me these tax increases. I don't think you folks in your profession are really asking the tough questions when they say, oh, they're just raising taxes. That's a lie.
Let me get Bill involved. Bill.
Let's talk about what is about to happen. You talked about the attrition plan in the fire department. And I think you've said, and certainly the council members who approved this budget and this tax rate have said that's not the end of this, that there are more tough days to come. We heard about fire station number 6 a lot this
Right.
past week. What is going to happen with the fire department? And it looks as if it's happening pretty quickly. It's unfolding pretty quickly.
All right, and Bill, I haven't had very many people to come to our defense on that. The very people who say cut, and we ought to cut, they're now the ones who are criticizing. Everybody wants to cut, but they won't say where. It's by attrition. And Director Benson, let me tell you, is doing an exemplary job. He checks with the Insurance Standards Office, the folks who rate us and rate property in terms of how much your insurance rates are going to be. We're not going to cross that line. Again, this is through attrition, this is through redeployment, this is through using different kinds of equipment, but we have made it clear, and Director Benson has made it clear, for the fearmongers who are saying, oh, he's getting rid of half the fire department, he's made it clear. This is through not replacing individuals who were leaving anyway. We're going to keep the response time within the acceptable standards so that there is no risk. And keep in mind, people always think in terms of a fire department as being that place that has these big trucks that just run all day long putting out fires. 70% of the calls are not for fires. They're for ambulance services, and that hasn't been touched. So there will be changes. There will be redeployment. There will be different uses of stations. But in terms of being able to respond within acceptable time limits, the department will be able to do that, and we will not fire people, and we will not lay folks off. When folks leave, we simply, in some instances, will not fill those positions.
And this is 300 positions overall, as the council approved, that you lose through attrition, which you're going to lose you're going to lose those people in this fiscal year, but the benefits will be over the next 2 fiscal years?
And that's the key question. Some members of the council just said, let's just cut. Well, there are certain things you cut, but you don't get a recurring benefit from those cuts. If you say, let's cut overtime this year, well, it may crop back up next year. The best way to take your numbers down and to keep them down, since most of your money is in personnel, our money is not in buildings and trucks and cars, it's in people. And the best way to keep those numbers down on a sustainable basis is to reduce your employee complement, and that's precisely what we've been doing, and we will continue to do that.
The 300, just so we're clear, are not all in the fire department.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, we don't. Okay, so the 300 are across city government.
Across.
And the fire department came up first, I guess, for whatever reason, but it'll be across all departments.
Right. It's across all departments. But again, we have to be entirely honest. If you look at where the money and where the people are, that's where it is. As I said a minute ago, if you exclude the Memphis Police Department from our employee complement, you will show, since I have been there since 2009, you will see a 13.7% cut.
The other part, when we're talking about people, and you know, it's a harsh conversation because these are real people, but we'll just stay on this for now, is the reductions in salary or reductions in their benefits. So let's do the salary first. There was a cut back some years ago in the middle of the really heart of the recession, 4.6% cut, I guess, across the board in city government. That was put back in this budget. Was that the responsible thing to do, given the pressure the city's finances are under?
I would say so, and let me tell you why. Again, we're not a manufacturing entity. We deliver services, and it takes people. I mean, that's our engine. It's like neglecting the engine in your car. The employees are the engine of city government. Shared sacrifice, I would argue that over the course of 2 years, without any raises, that the employees have contributed about $32 million toward getting the city on an even keel. And the 4.6 is not the totality of the decreases in their salary, because there were certain increases in health premiums and what went up. We figured it a few days ago is probably more like a 7 or 8% cut if you add inflation into it. So we wanted to get that behind us because we still have some other changes that we have to make with respect to pensions. So, and that's going to cost the employees.
Well, let's move to that too, because that's the other big,
right.
the other big, expense related to the people, and that is really part of a national discussion debate right now about government-funded long-term health care and benefits from Social Security, Medicare, Obamacare down to state and city. The state, I guess this last year, did a big restructuring of its benefit and health care plan for the long term. We're away from, I guess, a defined benefit, defined pension. Is the city going in that direction, and if so, when?
I would say we are going in that direction. Now, but the big questions, and this is where we will sit down with the employees. Obviously, the big question will be, are you going to do anything to those who are already vested? And what we have right now, we're waiting on our actuaries and consultants to come back and to take every category and see what changes can be made. You first have to deal with those employees who are vested. That's where your big number will be. Now, what do you do with them? Do you say, all right, you'll keep a defined benefit, but you'll pay more? Or do you simply say, we'll just leave that alone, and then we'll deal with those employees who are not vested? That's one category. Then what about the people who are hired in the future? I can pretty well tell you that those who are hired in the future, of course, that'll be few and far between because of the attrition plans we have to keep these vacancies open. But I can pretty well tell you that they will not be going into a defined benefit pension plan. That's the easy one to deal with.
Okay.
Where the more difficult category will be as those who are there who are not yet vested.
Who were promised something.
Something. That's correct. That's correct.
Let's also, we talk about the state and the comptroller's office putting this pressure on, asserting its authority over a local budget. When that happened, from a policy point of view, a political point of view, was that an overreach on the part of the state, or was that a helpful push in a certain direction?
It was a helpful push in the right direction. Everybody here locally has recognized that, hey, we've got something out there we've got to deal with. If you'll recall, roughly 2 years ago in our budget retreat, Director Lipscomb, I believe it was, had a chart, had the Titanic on it. So this should not have caught anybody by surprise. It was just next year, not this year, next year. Well, next year fortunately came sooner than expected.
Do you anticipate the comptroller getting involved again next year?
I would hope not. Oddly enough, on his own, I had to leave town the day after the budget, and surprisingly, I was actually making a speech, and the comptroller called me, and he said, well, you got a budget? And I said, yes, we did. He said, it was rough. I said, yes, it was. He said, I know. I said, well, how do you know? He said, I watched it. He streamed it. He watched it until 12:30 Wednesday morning. Yeah. And basically he said, you're heading in the right direction. We have a ways to go. He's going to watch us. That's what I told you about. He watched it. They're going to watch us. We welcome that. I would hope that it won't be necessary for him to get involved. We've received his message loudly and clearly, and nobody's arguing with that.
All right, Bill.
In the budget process, I think a lot of the attention is on the things that are projects. Playground here, CIP money attracts a lot of the attention, but in the operating budget, it also tends to be boots on the street, the phrase, more police officers, things like that, services, keeping community centers open longer, library hours, things like that. Has this forced, do you think, a fundamental shift in the nuts and bolts of the budget back to the unsexy issues like debt, the unsexy issues like pensions and benefits?
I think it's compelled us to say that we've got to have a split. We got to focus intensely on both of them. Potholes. Bill, it's odd. 2 days after the budget, I received a letter from a leading businessman in town complaining about potholes and the condition of our streets. Probably be the same person who will blast us next week for having raised taxes, a part of which will go into improving our ability to repave and maintain our streets. So we have to deal with just the bread and butter issues, the quality of life issues, that Chairman Ford and Councilman Collins talked about and provided leadership in those arenas. We've got to focus on it, yet at the same time, we do have to deal, and very critically so, with those, as you say, non-sexy deals of pension reform, and of course debt service. I mean, what's sexy about debt service? it ain't nothing sexy about $23 million that you don't have. But it simply shows, because the citizens are saying, just as loudly as the comptroller spoke, the citizens are saying, do something about potholes, keep the community centers open, put more resources into the library. Let's keep the libraries open. And that's why, I will defend that 340, because if you look at where it went, there's nothing frivolous. It deals with the long-term issues, yet it deals with the day-to-day quality of life issues. So, Bill, we don't have the luxury of making a choice and saying, well, we'll deal with the unsexy this year and deal with the sexy this year. By George, we got to deal with both of them at the same time.
Should you have been more forceful in going to the council? Should you have been more specific in saying, this is the plan I want, and saying that over and over again to them?
We rode the 351 horse till it broke all 4 legs. Remember, I stuck with the 351. When you're running in a race and you see your horse has 4 broken legs, either you can stand out there and get trampled, or you can get on the next horse to come by. I jumped on the next horse that came by. It wasn't a horse I wanted to win, but you have to use common sense on these things. Start trying to build a coalition. Fortunately, that coalition ended up with the 340.
Do you worry, though, critics of the taxes, critics of city government, that taxes like that, that's part of what drives people out of Memphis? That it's too, so they're going to go to the low-tax suburbs. But you know the story, right? We get to go to the low-tax suburbs and they tax me.
Yeah, let me say this. If that's the case, why didn't industry just flood in here back when they had that whopping tax cut back through that got us into this trouble? Did folks rush in here? Did folks stop leaving? That's what I mean. We've got to be more discerning in how we question folks when they come up with premises like that. If all you need to do to just cause folks to flood in like the great gold rush in 1849 or whenever it was, if cutting taxes would do that, we wouldn't have room for people, because one of the biggest tax cuts was back when they cut out the school funding.
And got it down to what, $3?
And how many people even know? How many people even know they got that tax cut back then? Right. So this idea of taxes running folks out of town. Who wants to raise taxes? I know I recruit a business here. I know they are concerned about taxes, but the idea that the only thing that is causing folks to leave, you keep raising taxes. I tell you, if you look at what happened in Detroit, in their process of trying to correct their wrongdoing in the past, they went too far in terms of cutting basic services, having to wait 58 minutes to get a police call answered. Now that's when folks really left. That's when they really left. And if we're not careful, this idea of trying to do, and quite frankly, it has failed in Europe. Chancellor Merkel, this idea of austerity will cure all ills. It has not worked globally. It will not work locally. You will not find one city government, state government, county government, anywhere that said, boy, we were in trouble, so we just cut. Who is focusing on growth? Do you ever hear talk about growth?
Well,
everything's just cut. Anybody can do that. Forrest Gump can say that.
We've had Angela Merkel and Forrest Gump in one show now. This is unprecedented.
I'll bring you a lot of guests.
Let's go back to the non-sexy issue of debt service. And you talked about the global economy and so on. And we talked a little bit about before the show. The changes from the Fed, Ben Bernanke, and the potential end, or the likely end of quantitative easing, the bond buying that they're doing at the federal government, has caused huge trouble in the municipal financing market in recent weeks. I think it's settled down over the last few days. But without getting too far into the economics of it, it's dollars and cents wise for the city of Memphis. It could mean very low financing costs or much higher costs. Where do you stand in terms of getting debt refinanced relative to the fluctuations in the municipal finance?
Well, a part of this budget has a $10 million refinancing piece in it. This is what prompted the attention of the comptroller. And oddly enough, Eric, at 11 o'clock on the day of the budget hearing, we got a call from our financial advisors that said, hey, look, the market is not settling down in the right place. And it looks like Secretary Bernanke will go ahead with the cessation of the quantitative easing, which will cause them to buy a lot of the bonds. This is why I'm doing things such as getting a revenue director in, because we still may have a gap in the 2014 budget as a result of the fact that we won't be able to net what we'd wanted to net on this refinancing, which has been approved, by the way. We may go through with it, but I don't think we will get anywhere near the $9 million that we'd expected to clear on it.
Bill.
That was going to be my next question. How does that complicate the restructuring that the council approved? So you're saying you may not pull the trigger on it, or you may pull the trigger at some other time when the conditions are better?
We may pull the trigger at some other time. Keep in mind, Mr. Bernanke did not say they were going to end quantitative easing. They were going to keep looking at certain barometers. If employment continues to go up, unemployment continues to drop. They haven't made that call yet. Eric said the market seems to settle down. Unfortunately, Eric, it settled down on the wrong end. I'd wanted to settle down up here, but it settled out way down here. Yeah. So we're just in a holding pattern on that right now, Bill.
So if you don't hit the $9 million premium for the next I think it's the 2 fiscal years after this one, what are the measures that the city might have to take in order to make that number some other way?
Well, I know everybody's expecting me to say more taxes, but that's not my default mode. It may mean more cuts. It may mean ramping up our efforts to increase our revenue. There's a lot of money out there we have not been collecting. Hopefully the economy will continue to rebound. Sales taxes are up. Home starts are picking up. So hopefully with an improving economy, with more efficiency, we'll be able to close the gap and not have to talk about raising taxes.
With the revenue director's position, is this going to be a division director? Is it going to be a director within a division? Can you define that position for me?
The way I contemplated it will not be a new cabinet level position in terms of a new division. We don't need all of that. This is someone who'll wake up every morning and simply look at every account receivable, everybody who's supposed to be paying us, and making sure we're getting what we're doing, that we're efficient as we do that. There are a lot of things that can be done. We hired one attorney to do some collections, and in about 6 months' time, he brought in almost $250,000. We need somebody who looks at that just every day, whether it's parking tickets, beer sales, or whatever.
Just 4 minutes left in the show, run through a couple of things. You talk about tax collections. This will be the first year that the county trustee is going to collect taxes on behalf of the city. Is that all on track? I mean, a lot of people pointed that and said, hey, why didn't we do that a long time ago? It's a way to, some people don't like the word consolidation, but it's a consolidation of services. The county trustee's already sending those bills out. You can, quote, easily do it for the city. Is that on track?
So far, so good. We got the notices out on time and all.
Auto inspections. Where do you see that going? I mean, as of some days ago, the city of Memphis is no longer doing auto inspections. It's a bit of a standoff with the county and the state. What comes next in terms of auto inspections in Memphis?
What comes next is right now there are no auto inspections. What comes next is continuing our efforts along with the county to find other ways of decreasing, to use a simple language, pollution. Make sure we're getting credit for the fact that we now have more bike lanes. Make sure that we take credit for the fact that light, gas, and water is getting into the liquefied natural gas process. Make sure that a number of our factories who have decreased the number of pollutants, emissions into there, those things are not incorporated into our present plan. So right now what we're doing is looking at every operation to see if there are credits we can use to show the EPA that we really don't need auto inspection. The newer cars are cleaner, and so keep in mind, inspections came in, I don't know how many years ago, when cars were not as clean as they are now.
Okay, Bill.
The Memphis Area Transit Authority Board just approved a 6-month extension for Will Hudson as the president of the Transit Authority. Some of the board members are talking about a transition in leadership there. As the mayor, do you think there should be a transition in leadership, and is that about to happen?
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Hudson has done a great job. Came in right after I was elected and said he was going to stay about 2 more years. We discussed then a transition process. We're doing a lot of planning on that. We're working with some outside entities who are going to help us not merely conduct a search, but to do a thorough review of our entire operations to make sure that we are operating as in tune with the needs of our ridership as possible. What more can we do? Satellite parking, all of those things like Nashville has done. So it'll be a total revamp, not merely, hey, let's get a new person in here to run the same old agency.
What's the update, just a minute left here, on Bass Pro, a big project that, you know, is, I think, really one of the biggest, most ambitious repurposings of a otherwise abandoned arena. There are many abandoned arenas around the country, and this one's being repurposed. Is it on track? It got delayed from its original date. Where does Bass Pro stand?
It's basically on track, and the reason I say basically is that the seismic shoring up on the west side down there, that's underway, and some interior work will soon turn it over to Bass Pro, and they'll get cranking. It is on schedule in terms of the fact that it's a much larger project than originally envisioned.
All right. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Bill, thank you. And thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. Good night.